Welcome back to the podcast, guys. Today's podcast is based around a simple concept. A high-quality question determines the quality of the thoughts you have and the actions you take. As a coach, I've realized a long time ago, and I still think about it on a daily basis, is that one of my main jobs is to problem solve. When I start working with someone, or we start working with someone here at Strength for Endurance, they are unique. They're always going to be unique. You are unique. Listening to this podcast where you've lived a number of chapters of your life so far. You've gone through a hell of a lot already. You've participated in multiple sports. You've had multiple injuries. You've had multiple health considerations. You've got certain genetics. You've had certain, you've come up through a certain upbringing. There's so many different factors that we need to understand. But to determine who you are, what you need, and what you need to be kind of working on moving forward, so especially when it comes to your training and working towards your current training goal, there needs to be a series of key, high-value, high-quality questions that need to be kind of discussed between us and you to determine what you truly need. We know what you want. You're probably coming to the conversation knowing pretty much where you want to be in maybe 3, 6, 12 months' time. You stepping onto a start line, going abroad somewhere, doing an event, having a certain holiday experience trip eventually that you want to have. You want to get past a certain injury. But before we go down that rabbit hole, and we start going down that road and we start programming, the value is going to be found in the line of questioning that comes up between obviously coach and you, us and you. And what I want to talk about today are some of those key questions that potentially you have never been asked and that you've never really kind of sat with, because they are the answer to a lot of potential struggles you're dealing with right now, the injuries, the setbacks, the lack of results that you're seeing, why you're progressing so slowly, multitude of reasons. But as I said, the high quality questions can truly determine the state of your mind, but also the type of actions that you're currently taking. A lot of people are taking a lot of superficial action at the moment. They are kind of hoping that a momentary superficial treatment is going to solve their problems, that potentially just backing off a little bit of intensity is going to help them in the long term. But actually, there's a series of questions that probably have never been challenged on that actually will unpack, will literally unravel and give you all the insights that you need to then start taking action on. Because the truth is, I have no doubt, you are the type of person that as soon as you know what you need to work on, you'll action it. You'll start doing the things that you need to do to take action. But if you're not being asked the right type of questions, if you aren't doing that kind of the deep mental work, the deep personal development work to kind of go, right, maybe I'm not considering this enough. Maybe I'm not being held accountable to this enough. And it doesn't need to be an external coach doing this for you. You could be doing it for yourself, but it's whether you are challenging yourself on these certain areas. So what we're going to do, guys, we're going to run through some series of questions, and I'm not going to linger too long on any of them, I don't think. But what I want is just you get a bit of an insight into some of the key questions that would come up in a good conversation with a coaching professional, someone that wants to understand who you have been, what you've gone through, what different chapters of your life that will have led up to this point where, that would have defined you physically, mentally, socially. We want, understanding kind of what the background of your lifestyle looks like, etc. But truly, the line of questioning is everything. And then that line of questioning that then follows on week in, week out, within your program, and you're being held accountable to variations of those kind of themes that the questions bring. So I don't feel there's any particular order here. There could be, and we could probably go into the weeds and probably discuss what these kind of the questions could be. But let's just talk, straight from the top. How long have you been training in this sport? What sort of training experience have you had up until this point? Have you had significant time away from the sport? Is it something that you used to do back in the day, but then now you've coming back into it later on in life? Key question. What type of experience do you have? What sort of level of physical tolerance do you have? What sort of, in your joints, muscle tissue, has your body done the activities that you want to do more of in the next number of months? That is a huge, important question to ask, because then obviously you can't then just assume that, if you've had no experience, then expecting your body to tolerate high volumes of training, high intensities of training, hopefully it makes sense. Like, you're going to have to allow your body to acclimatize and get used to those movements and the demands on your body. What level of training experience have you got in your current sport? Have you been trained like professionally in the past? As in, have you had a coach's work, kind of teaching you? Have you worked one-on-one? Have you worked in training coaching environments? Have you worked in, trained with a club before? Or is everything you've done self-coached? Is everything self-taught? Now, there's not a particular right or wrong answer to this. It's just curiosity. Like, what education frameworks have you worked with in the past? What depth of knowledge do you have around the sport you're taking part in? I know there's a romantic idea that you just want to run, ride, swim more, but there is a science to it. There is a logic to it. With the way you construct a program around your lifestyle. What does that look like right now? And there's nothing wrong with it being all self-coached. We work with a hell of a lot of people that have been self-coached, and then they are now looking for a little bit more direction, a little bit more framework. Are there any physical conditions, concerns that we need to be considered? When starting a program, has that ever been asked of you? A lot of people working from programs off the shelf, kind of from the internet and things, that would have never really been asked. But those physical considerations are everything. What were they? What are they now? What do they need? What do we need to be working on as well as alongside that program? There's a complexity here. Obviously, we can go down a rabbit hole with, in terms of bunions, surgical interventions. You've had, surgeries around ankles, knees, hips. So starting a program without that type of quality conversation where they go, okay, yeah, I've had this in the past. Do you think that's going to do it? Do you think I'll be able to tolerate X amount of mileage a week? What do we need to be working on extra alongside that? Physical concerns. It's a nice way of saying it, but there are things that we all accumulate over time through injury, through sedentary lifestyle, not doing a lot, through freak accidents, through just nature in itself, where we are getting older. What sort of physical condition are we in going into a program? Again, going into, like, if you have had injuries, what sort of length of rehab that you've had? Do you feel like it was a successful rehabilitation? Did you get back to performing back at your best again? Or do you feel like there was, there's further work needed to be done? Can you imagine trying to start a training program that in 16 weeks' time assumes that you can run a marathon at sub 3.5 hours, or you're trying to take on a 24-week program that's going to take you up to 50k, 100k event? That doesn't ask these types of questions from the start. That isn't challenging you on this, because it's the underpinning, right? And this is where the program can quickly expand for you. It's like, right, here we go. Here's the training volume. Here's your training intensity. But then let's look at what the other considerations are. What sort of timeline are we working to in terms of getting you back to be able to run 50k, 100k for fun, to be able to do that pain-free, injury-free, and not have a reoccurrence of injury along the way? Have you experienced or participated in other sports or activities growing up? A great question that I think doesn't get asked, but what we do defines us. And if you spent your whole young athletic lifestyle, like playing particular sports, racket sports, team sports, ball sports, what are we going to see? When we start to see you move, are you going to have significant compensations, strengths and weaknesses in your body because you've done certain sports? Racket sports, massive single-side imbalances sometimes because they've just played right-handed, left-handed a hell of a lot. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of repetitions, obviously. If you play ball sports, you're going to be very good in certain planes of motion. You're going to be very good at short, sharp interval training efforts. What do you look like over long durations? Are you going to be short through certain ranges of motion? Hamstrings, lower back, glutes, certain joints that are just going to have weaknesses, but they're going to have significant strengths. It's really, really interesting when you kind of get to see someone move. So whenever we start with anyone, we go, we're taking through a movement screen, bodyweight strength testing. Why? Because we want to see if there's any obvious things that we go, okay, that's interesting. Why was that? And you kind of unpack that individual and they go, oh yeah, actually that makes a lot of sense because I used to play X, Y, and Z, or I had an injury back in the day. But what it does is it gives you an idea as to what that body is going to look like under even more stress, under more strain. We are never going to be perfectly balanced and efficient because we're always going to have some form of dominance and single side strength, etc., because it's just who we are. But how significant those differences are will define us. 50k into a run, 100k into a run, 200k into a ride, 3 miles into an open water swim, whatever it is, we want movement efficiency. We are looking for that movement, we want quality movement mechanics as much as possible. If not, we're going to start to overload certain joints, overload certain muscle tissues, etc., etc. And that's where these compensations and training injuries come in. A lot of the time for endurance athletes, going into having an understanding around your previous training programming. You're about to start on a new program, and as a coach, you want to understand what their training has been up until this point. Again, trying to establish what sort of level they're at, that we're playing at. Complete beginner, intermediate, advanced, like very basic thinking, but what level of tolerance and conditioning do they have already in their cardiovascular system, aerobic system, or in their joint structures? Like, what can their bodies already tolerate, or what haven't they been tolerating? You know, what are the behaviours leading up to this point? 6 to 7 days a week. And this is always interesting when you're dealing with an injury. It's like, please don't tell me someone's trying to help you with an injury that it hasn't been deep diving into your past. And I'm asking you these types of critical questions around what has the landscape looked like up until this point. A sign of a great health professional or a coach is someone who's going to challenge you on those old behaviours and go, hey, do you know, like through this line of questioning, it's almost like self-discovery. You're going to realise actually that's probably why I picked up this injury. This is probably why I'm struggling, because I'm just trying to do too much, or I'm doing too much of this or not enough of that. This is that kind of self-discovery where you want that, because then you kind of, it cements the reasons why we need to then work on periodization, more nutrition, more strength and conditioning, whatever it needs to be that it's going to get you back on track. So when it's with this line of questioning, with these types of questions, what you're trying to do is build this bigger picture. But what it actually creates, for both coach and individual and you, but essentially what you're also doing is you're kind of creating this buy-in. Okay, this is probably why I've been struggling. This area. This is probably why I've been, I'm exhibiting these symptoms. You're creating this momentum already. You're starting to build momentum, and you're like, you get to a point where after this line of questioning and the first conversation you have, it's like, okay, I need to take action. Where do I start? Like, how do I start doing the right exercises? How do I start, the right nutritional framework? How do I start, bringing more recovery methods into my week, warm-up drills, etc. You already have, I myself was challenged on this recently, and immediately I want to get in the gym, or I want to go out on the road and just try a few new things. So it's very much worth having this type of conversation. And again, just frame this and go, why are so many people having problems when they're only following a generic training template that's only asking them how many days a week do you want to train, how long would we have to train for, and what are we training for? There's zero depth to understanding what you need there with those types of questions. It's all about what you want, and it's not about what you need. And this is where this line of questioning comes in. How many weeks of consistent training have you done up until this point? How much sort of depth of conditioning do you have? What sort of diet do you follow? What's the justification behind that? In terms of why do you follow those, and then what does your kind of weekly nutrition look like? Do you fuel pre and post sessions? Do you hydrate well? Though, when it comes to your strength and conditioning, do you do any? What does it look like? How consistent has it been? There are just a series of questions that you can start to drip feed through a conversation, which just start to open up. One of the hardest hitting ones is when you ask someone about their blood health or hormonal health. When was the last time regular period, menstrual cycle? Do you know your levels of testosterone, your bone density score? If you're someone who's gone through the menopause, you're at those kind of middle ages. It's kind of, these are key questions we want to know. What type of job do you do on a week-to-week basis? What does your lifestyle look like? Can we write down quickly what a Monday through Sunday routine looks like for you? The power of questions, guys, is unbelievable. Like, it's essentially, I just wanted us to to discuss today some of those key questions that hopefully may have triggered you or got you thinking about, maybe I haven't really deep dived enough into those areas enough. I haven't expanded on those areas enough, because it is where the gold is. It truly is. The magic that you're looking for is in the things that you're avoiding. This is something this quote I've been leaning into. The magic that you are looking for is in the things that you are avoiding. There's a lot to be said about that, and you can relate that to all walks of life. But so some of the questions here are, when they're asked of you, and you're sitting there trying to work out what the answer is to them, that can be the moment where you have that light bulb moment. But that is where we come back to. That will improve the quality of your thoughts and the actions that you take. And that is what we're looking for. We want you to take action, get on top of the things that you're struggling with right now, and it comes back down to the questions and then the programming and the accountability off the back of that. Guys, as always, any questions around that and any further discussion, let us know. We look forward to speaking to you soon.